Hi all, Stanky here. Video game consoles are in a weird place. On August 7th, 2025, Sony Senior Vice President Sadahiko Hayakawa said the following in Sony's financial report. In the gaming business, we are moving away from a hardware-centric business model, more to a platform business that expands the community and increases engagement. This is a clear sign from PlayStation that they are looking to go third-party, much like Xbox. Or at least they are prepping people to see more and more of their games come to other consoles. And I mean, this isn't entirely surprising, considering Sony now has put much of their games on PC, and then you have projects like Lego Horizon going to Switch, or Helldivers 2 going to Xbox. As we look at PlayStation and Xbox now, it's so weird to see everybody going third party. It used to be that you had a big 2 or 3 home consoles. These were hardware manufacturers that supported their mainline consoles with exclusives and third-party titles. These exclusives added to the flavor of the console, giving you a reason to buy one over the other. Meanwhile, third-party releases rounded out the console, giving you a compelling gaming experience with both first and third party titles. This era of console gaming is now gone. So how did we get here? Why is PlayStation talking about going multi-platform? And what is the future going to look like? Are game consoles dead? In one of my other videos, I went pretty hard at Xbox, and honestly, it's only fair to do the same with PlayStation. But how did we get here? Why is Sony making these strange statements even though they're on top of the world with the PlayStation 5? In order to understand PlayStation in the now, we have to go back in time to 2009. In 2009, PlayStation was in a weird spot. Their third home console, the PS3, up to this point had been an abject disappointment, failing to set the world on fire like the PS2 did. This is because the PS3 launched with a ridiculous $600 price tag, coupled with lackluster games that just led to the console struggling out of the gate. But 2009 was the year PlayStation truly was able to turn it around. The launch of the PS3 Slim in 2009 allowed them to drop the price of the console, making it more affordable for the average consumer. But most importantly, Sony finally hit their stride, releasing high-budget first-party exclusives. Uncharted 2 Among Thieves released in October 13th of 2009, and this was a revolution for the PS3. Suddenly, PlayStation had this killer app, a high-production action game that was narratively driven, fun to play, and just generally made the console look cool. The impact Uncharted 2 had on PlayStation cannot be understated. This was the game that suddenly changed PlayStation's perspective. Sure, at the time, Xbox may be dominating with great third-party games, but in their mind, PlayStation Studios could save themselves. They could make blockbuster games as PlayStation to make the PS3 a unique console experience. And we see this throughout the generation. We see Sony embrace this by dropping bangers like Uncharted 3, The Last of Us, Infamous 1 and 2, Little Big Planet. The list goes on and on. And this strategy works. By the end of the PS3 and Xbox 360 generation, PlayStation actually ends up outselling Xbox by a slim margin. So at this point, PlayStation has a winning formula. Make high-quality, compelling games that look the best, have the best stories, and that are fun to play, and people will flock to the console. They carry this strategy with them into the PS4 era. Because the Xbox One is a disaster, they capture a lot of people moving over. People come to PS4 and they build their permanent digital libraries there, staying forever. During the PS4 generation, Sony continues to have great games. They have a crazy first-party streak with Bloodborne, Uncharted 4, Horizon, God of War, Spider-Man, Ghost of Tsushima, The Last of Us Part 2, Death Stranding. The list goes on and on. But as PlayStation is generally crushing it during the PS4 generation, they start to notice a problem. These big budget first party games that draw people to the console, they are getting expensive. By 2020, as the PS4 is winding down, The Last of Us Part 2 comes out. This game costs over $200 million to make alone. And because this game was so expensive to develop and market, Sony made a whole lot less on this game than they thought. Now, now, as PlayStation enters PS5 generation, they have a problem. The thing that they are known for, high-quality AAA games, are actually costing a lot more, and they're not making as much money on them because they're extremely expensive to make. So because of this, PlayStation brings in longtime skinwalker Jim Ryan to lead their console business in 2019. Ryan is from the marketing team, and he's been around since the PS2 days, and he is truly a slimy CEO in heart. As he inherits this problem of single-player games costing too much, he has the most CEO-ass idea ever. Let's just make a bunch of live service games. During his tenure as PlayStation CEO, Jim Ryan greenlights 12 live service games. It's worth noting that PlayStation got additional funding from their parent company to do this, so single player wasn't quite impacted, but still, that's a lot. These 12 live service games so far have proven to be a massive blunder, losing a ton of money and embarrassing PlayStation. Let me read you this ridiculous list of how badly PlayStation has bungled this live service initiative. We have our first success, Arrowhead Games, Helldivers 2. Ben Studio, they had an unannounced game as a service. It was canceled in 2025. Bluepoint had an unannounced canceled God of War game as a service for some reason. That was canceled in 2025. Marathon exists, but will it come out? We don't know! Bungie also had Payback, canceled in 2024. Firesprite was making a Twisted Metal live service game. This was canceled in 2024. Concord released and was canceled in 2024. Guerrilla Games has some Horizon game that hasn't came out. Fair Games is probably dead in the water, but it's supposed to come out this year. Insomniac had a Spider-Man game that got canceled. London Studio had a AAA fantasy multiplayer game that got canceled in 2024. And Naughty Dog had The Last of Us Factions Online, canceled in 2023. This is embarrassing. PlayStation fanboys will try to defend this, saying stuff like, "Hey Stanky, they had to do this. PlayStation needed to dump a bunch of money into live service, knowing that a couple of these games would fail. All of these failures are necessary to have the next hit." And to this I say you're an idiot. You don't understand how companies work. Follow me here. Publicly traded companies sell pieces of themselves on the market. These are called stocks. Publicly traded companies are led by a C-suite and that company's board. It is the job of these leaders to ensure that the company has a sustainable growth model, to grow the stock price and ensure investor confidence. When investors are confident, stock prices surge as people buy in. While the idea of throwing a bunch of live service games at the wall and seeing what sticks seems like a good idea, in reality it is awful business sense for a publicly traded company. These companies live and die by their stock price, and shareholders do not want to buy or hold your stock when it appears it is losing value. And that's what happened with PlayStation. At the time of recording, they've canceled 8 high-profile live service games that easily could have costed over $100 million. These 12 live service games were a bad idea, not just because they were time-intensive and costly, but because they fundamentally misunderstand how companies work, how stock price and perception functions. If people think your company is wasting money on bad business initiatives, they do not want to buy in. PlayStation instead should have taken a more conservative approach, carefully cultivating 1 to 5 games with oversight. I mean, hell, have someone on board who gets live service. Have this person oversee and make sure the studios are creating quality. Don't let some glorified tool from the marketing department lead your live service initiative. Look, I just spent a lot of time talking about PlayStation, but it is crucial to talk about their struggles to discuss the future of game consoles. Frankly, it seems like the games industry is moving away from old platform-exclusive models. Xbox is fully multi-platform, and PlayStation is testing the waters with their PC initiatives, bringing Lego Horizon to Switch and Helldivers 2 to Xbox. So why are these companies doing this? Why is it they feel the need to put their games everywhere? The answer, sadly, is a combination of rising costs and not enough players. In 2017, former PlayStation CEO Sean Layden made a bold claim. He said that there are only about 250 million core console gamers. His argument is based on what I assume to be the data he saw at PlayStation. This argument is that you have this pool of 250 million people, and it really doesn't grow. These are the core console gamers that will always buy a console, but that number stays stagnant. Now this creates a problem. Games are becoming more and more expensive. At the same time, the games industry as a whole is not growing, so it becomes harder and harder to make money off of expensive single-player exclusive games. On top of all of this, consumer game spending is down. Matt Piscatella, a games industry analyst at Circana, noted that in 2025 alone, Gen Z specifically was down on video games, as Gen Z spent nearly 25% less on games than in previous years. Couple this with too many free-to-play games, and it makes sense why a company would want to put their games everywhere, as it helps to counteract these losses they experience than if they made their games exclusive. These companies, unfortunately, must keep growing quarter after quarter because they are publicly traded. Since core gamers are not growing and their spending is down, this leads these companies to the last thing they have left, expanding into new console markets. While this video may sound like console fanboy doom and gloom, I truly do not mean to come off that way. Honestly, I actually think this multi-platform future, where everyone's games are on everything, is actually good for gamers. I recently got a Steam Deck, and the one thing that I have been pleased about is just the sheer amount of games you can play on this thing. Because so many of these companies have put their legacy titles on Steam, the Steam Deck is a console where you can literally play everything. Last week alone, I was able to play The Last of Us and Halo on the same singular device, on top of emulating old Nintendo games. While this future may seem bad for the console fanboy out there, it's great for us, the people who care about games, the people who love playing games no matter the place. While the Steam Deck's sales are low, I think the Steam Deck ultimately is emblematic of the future of the industry. As these big hardware companies pivot to consoles that are more PC-like, I guarantee you we will see a future where a whole lot more games are on everything. A console that functions as a PC but for your living room. Somebody could easily buy a Steam Deck and never go into desktop mode. I think these console companies are going to create streamlined experiences for console gamers that do have that back end for the hardcore. A console that's more modular and PC-like. Look, I don't think that video game consoles are dead, but I do think our expectations about what a console is about to radically change. Because if PlayStation, with all of their success, feel like they need a multi-platform strategy, the console game industry is in dire straits. What happens when you're on the top of the world, you're the most successful console, and you still feel like you're struggling to make ends meet? You go multi-platform. But hey, maybe I'm off base here. Let me know in the comments down below. Thanks all. Love you. Bye. Remember, this channel is home to stinky opinions. Love what you saw? Hate what you saw? Drop a comment down below. And why not subscribe if you enjoyed the show? Thanks for me, Stanky, the CEO.